Great, thank you. Good morning and welcome to the September 21st meeting of the Traffic Safety Advisory Work Group. This meeting is being conducted remotely pursuant to Chapter 2 of the Acts of 2023. Please note the meeting is being recorded and all attendees are participating by video conference, and please be aware not to screen share your computer. Anything you broadcast might be captured by the recording. I'll introduce each speaker on the agenda. Please be sure to speak through the chair and speak clearly in a way, identify yourself, speak clearly in a way to generate accurate meeting minutes. And each vote in this meeting will be conducted by roll call vote. And with that, we will move on to our agenda. Any questions, comments, or concerns with the agenda as published? Hearing none, we'll proceed in unanimous consent. Any public comment for items that were not otherwise on the agenda? Please feel free to speak up or raise your virtual hand and I'll recognize you. I'm not seeing any. So we'll move on to the first item, which is to review the request to explore making Gardner Street one way. And I see that we have Mr. Bloomer with us, and we had discussed this at our last meeting, the request, and Mr. Burns had dug up some material from past studies related to this and included them in our packet. Mr. Burns or Mr. Bloomer? Mr. Bloomer, you want us to go, or you have anything you want to add in addition to your request?
Not really. I
Okay.
think that it's a safety issue, and it's also one where the sidewalks are getting destroyed. I took a look at the materials you kindly sent over and would love to make it one way towards a Civil War monument and get a bike path in there.
Okay. Mr. Burns, anything you want to review of those materials or add?
Yeah, I would just note that there were some ideas that were in the packet that were discussed in 2017, I believe. I don't think those ever got a recommendation to be implemented or tried or tested or in a pilot. The idea at the time in 2017 was to have a one-way flow inbound, northbound, with a bike facility or bike lane striped next to the inbound lane as a dedicated bike facility, and then and that lane would flow out of town, and then going inbound it would be a share the road condition between bicyclists and vehicles. So there would be a contraflow bike lane next to a share the road condition along the corridor, and that was the just to make the best use of the approximately 14 feet of width from curb to curb. The idea was to have the about a 4-foot bike lane next to the about 10-foot travel lane that would be shared. And at the time it was being discussed, I think the appetite was to have one-way inbounds. The data that was collected from traffic counts show that it's fairly even. There's obviously a morning peak of traffic going inbounds, and then that tapers off to predominantly out of town flow towards the end of the day. But it was just felt that inbound flow seemed to be what was preferred at that time. I'm sure either direction could go because it's fairly evenly split depending on the time of day.
Well, one thing I'd just like to add is, in the last 5 years, I don't know the exact number, but the amount of traffic at peak times and peak seasonal times has more than doubled. It's just quite extraordinary.
Thank you. And does that cover it for you, Mr. Burns?
That's all I'm prepared to discuss.
Thank you.
Mike, do you want to discuss the crash data?
Yeah, we can.
Mr. Rowland had asked for crash data to be provided. You and I apologize to everyone for not getting this to you yesterday. This is a slide from Mike that provided, but then I also got a slide from the police department, which reports only three minor incidents in the last 5 years. So
That's very helpful. Thank you. I think we can all sort of see what we have there.
Mr.
Well-
Chair, I would just note that the predominant crash, if you will, that along the corridor, it looks like there's about one a year of, and they're essentially side swipes or angles. Again, because it's such a narrow roadway, I'm sure that there's mirrors that get clipped, but this is capturing, and I don't want to talk out of school. I'm going to rely on Chief Pittman to kind of correct me, but I believe these are capturing crashes with property damage of $1,000 or more. If that's, I believe that's correct. That's what the state's database captures. I can't speak to the Nantucket Police Department. This might be additional data that I'll let the chief talk to.
I mean, all I'll add is that it may or may not at $1,000. It just depends on what the officer that gets there decides. Sometimes they just decide it's easier to just fill out the paperwork than to debate what the value is. So it may or may not.
Thank you. Work group members, any other comments or thoughts on Mr. Barnes? I'll come to you in just a second, but thank you for letting, I see you there. On the request, not seeing any. Mr. Barnes, always happy to hear from you.
Thank you. My question is, isn't the new sewer main going to go up Gardner Street when it's finished up Lily and then moving to up Gardner?
I can answer that. So
Thank you.
it's going to come up Lily Street to Liberty, and then it's going to take a left on Liberty. So it's not going all the way down Gardner. So it's only going to be on Liberty a little bit before it takes that left onto Liberty Street proper.
My other question is there any option simply to widen Gardner Street by a foot or so by moving the curbs? I know we got to keep the tree, but what about just widening it a foot?
I would say, I think when we looked at that a little bit, it started quickly to run into those telephone poles.
They
So
can't be moved?
well, there's the proverbial, string in the ball of yarn that we were talking about to, what you'd be getting into to try to, make changes to this particular corridor.
And also, Art, when you start talking about moving utility poles, you'd be moving them in, which would actually be blocking a sidewalk that you're narrowing. So it gets very complicated. And I know people will then say, well, why don't you bury the utility poles? Well, there's no money for that. You'd also end up with giant green transformers, and where would those land? And would those take up more space on the sidewalk? So you might be doing more harm than good trying to move those poles.
And you already have a sidewalk problem where, especially now that we're in sort of stroller season, the amount of children, little toddlers and the strollers going up and down here is extraordinary. And you'd remove their ability to walk.
Yes, I think that sort of hearing both sides, and that's where we ran up against back in 2017 as well. It's sort of a pre-existing condition that's extremely challenging to improve without additional implications or repercussions. It's a carry forward. You fix one thing and did you make something else worse? For example, a major concern that I'll share that I have is that changing it to one way will increase traffic congestion in other areas where motorists have to seek alternate routes, as well as to increase the speed on that corridor because of the wider travel lane. I think that while the conflicts in vehicles that when they're coming through that narrow corridor is not ideal, it does have the other effect of slowing the traffic flow. And I think you would see, regardless of either direction that you go in, and I don't know that we're going to solve which direction is preferred. What's going to happen to all the other traffic if you make it one way versus the other way? And then the speed, I think, is very likely to increase. And so I personally will say that I don't favor a change here. I appreciate the fact that you've brought this forward. I think we all recognize it as a challenging situation, and but I think that it's one of those situations where it's a historical town and not everything can just be changed, if you will. So that's my personal opinion that I wanted to share. Ms. Mooney?
Sorry, I just wanted to kind of piggyback on that. You said the exact same things that I was going to offer as a staff member. Just and I would know, I get what Mr. Bloomer's saying about the increase in traffic congestion, or the increase in traffic, but it's not just on Gardner Street, it's on Nantucket as a whole. It is everywhere. The amount of complaints that we get about traffic in this office at town administration is staggering. And there's really nothing that we can do about that. There's cars here, they're traveling everywhere. I will say that in times when roads have become one way, there are definitely concerns of speed. As soon as you take those, vehicles on street or when you're passing, kind of act as a natural traffic calming device. Next thing you know, we're going to ask, can we have speed humps on Gardner Street because people are going too fast like they were on Lily? So when you're seemingly solving one problem, you're potentially creating others. And I have serious concerns about all the feeder roads that go into Gardner Street and the impacts of that traffic and where it's going to go and where it's going to lead to is going to cause issues in other areas.
So why don't we unpack some of these issues that you brought up? So on the speed issue, we could very easily put a speed bump to calm the traffic on Gardner Street up approximately where the antique fire station is. And if the traffic were to go one way towards a Civil War monument, we would have people going up the hill, which would further help. So that certainly is one issue on the speeding. As far as the traffic issue is concerned, let's break it down for a second. Someone who is commuting from Mid-Island and they're going through Gardner Street today to get to a construction site, let's say over on Cliff, if they were to go an alternative route, would that add 1 minute, 2 minutes to their commute? And so the question then becomes, which I think is one of safety. It's only a matter of time before someone's going to get clipped on these sidewalks. And so I think that safety issue has a higher potential cost. And I do appreciate that there may be backups, but we already see extraordinary backups right around the Civil War monument, especially in the summer. And so I think there are other pathways the traffic can take, which when I see it, they seem to be much, much less crowded than anything that approaches on Gardner Street. So I think you are correct in that one issue leads to another issue. However, I think we can unpack this and we can deal with some of these other issues.
All right. I would just again note the traffic, the crash data and the information on any kind of accidents, which is very slim.
Got it. I think members, I appreciate again that you've taken your time, Mr. Bloomer, and brought this forward. Maybe someone else feels differently, or a majority, work group than I do, but I just think that I don't think that it's something that I could support making a change to myself, and I just want to express that to you. Anybody else have anything further or wish to put something out for changes or suggestions?
Mr. Chair, I honestly, I didn't think this was such a bad idea back in 2017. I do realize there's a lot of concerns. The best way to test a lot of these things is to do a pilot for a short period. I might make that recommendation to the select board, is to pilot this concept for a period to evaluate the impacts and just how the community is willing to tolerate that kind of condition. So I'd make that motion.
Before you make that motion, Mike, can I offer a comment that if you do that, I would recommend you wait until the sewer force main project goes through that area, because it's going to be a disaster when that project's going on. And there's going to be all kinds of detours. And it doesn't make sense to institute a pilot program when you've got a major infrastructure project going through there.
And what is the date? What's the date of that construction?
They're coming back to Lily Street in December.
Okay.
What about doing between now and December?
I think, okay, well, we can consider it. Mr. Sutters?
Yeah, I'm resident at 25 Hussey Street, so obviously I have an interest in this project. Can maybe through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. Burns, explain how outbound traffic on Hussey Street, would we just be either India or Lily would be the only two options? Like if I'm leaving my house, where am I going to be able to go once I'm at the end of Hussey Street?
Right back to town.
Right, exactly. That's kind of the,
That's a disaster in the summertime.
right.
So I would be in favor outbound, just because self-interest, obviously, but also I think that outbound would make more sense to get, more people out of town than more people in town.
And what happens to India Street?
One way to solve that problem is you leave it two-way on where until it intersects at Liberty. So at coming out of town, Liberty makes a left or a right at Gardner Street. If going to the right could still remain, which is I think North Liberty, if that was still two-way, you would solve that problem. And then if you made Gardner one way from Liberty to the Civil War Monument, going towards the Civil War Monument, you would solve that problem.
And what happens to India Street?
When you come out of
You can make it a bike lane only street.
Well, you'd have to come, yeah, what happens to all the people that have houses there? And
when they make a right and then go down North Liberty and then make a left and come back out into town.
I think the point is kind of being made here.
So then you have to ask yourself, I believe, that how much of additive time would their commute be? And I think it would be in the order of 1 to 2 minutes. It's not an extraordinary amount of time. Meanwhile, you've got an incredible situation on Gardner. And I'm telling you, the safety and the crowding and the sidewalk, the town at the moment is basically by fact, maybe not by law, but allowing the sidewalks to be the street.
Which happens in multiple other locations. And I personally take Gardner Street every single day, in and out of town. And I don't see an issue. You slow down, you pass somebody, or you pause and let somebody pass you. But that's my personal opinion.
Again, I appreciate, the effort that you've made to bring this forward for, discussion and thoughts. I just think that when you more fully vet it of all of the impacts that are related to it, to the changes here, that I might, again, I stand by my feeling. I don't support a pilot program. That's just my position, but everyone else, Mr. Burns, you're free to make a motion if you would like to regarding a pilot program, though I think you'd have to have some details as to that if you wanted to put this off another month to come up with a proposal for that, or whether it's something you did on the fly, or whether you think this whole thing really, maybe you revisit it after the sewer project, sort of open to, discussion by the work group.
And Mr. Gasparo, can I also suggest a plan which not only shows the direction being proposed or directions being proposed for Gardner Street, but also
the other roads.
traffic from the feeder roads are supposed to get around.
But I think ultimately, if there was support for that kind of a pilot, program, or then that would need to be developed before it could go to the select board and expect that they might get behind it. And then it's probably a public hearing, and it's just like what we're seeing a minor piece of here. You got one resident that sort of raised it. We're going to have, there's going to be the select board is going to get faced with this, and there's going to be much more residents and exposure to this, and I think you're going to have both sides, and you can have a lot of folks that have these same concerns. So if you're going to propose it, I think it's important to think about exactly what the next step in that process is going to be.
Yeah. Mr. Chair, I would just say that the spirit of the motion was to take the temperature of the room. I don't think that we want to come here and fully bake the idea just yet if it's not a popular idea at all. So I don't want to spin my wheels on it, but this is something that was discussed in the past. It seemed to be a popular idea amongst some and an unpopular idea amongst others. We're all guessing at the impacts and circulations, and quite frankly, I don't have a strong opinion one way or the other which way the one way would go. I think that's kind of the point of the discussion, is to see what the tolerance or the willingness of the community is to kind of accept that as a one way, and which direction the community wants. If it's the desire to keep it the same condition, it's very slow moving traffic, which is probably why the crash rates are so low. Just looking at the some speed data, it's 20 miles an hour along the corridor, and speeds really don't get that high. It's a pretty heavily traveled bike corridor, and I think that was really the genesis of the trade, was to accommodate other users. But if they can all be balanced with a two-way condition, with a little bit of frustration, understandably, and some tolerance, then it's been there for a long time, so it could probably still continue to be that way with the low crash rate. I would again just suggest the motion of doing a pilot to have the conversation, see if it actually works, and if there's some kind of benefit of doing the change. But if it's not popular, then
So can you just add
We don't-
details about the pilot program? What would it entail? That you're asking the committee to vote on?
I think in the past, when we've piloted a number of different one-way scenarios, it's been for like a 2-week trial, something like this. I mean, I have to go back through and look at other examples that we've done in the past that either are undone or become permanent. So if, again, the idea was to float the pilot idea for additional discussion and refinement, if it's not popular, why come up with every single detail right now?
No, I get it. I was just asking for the minutes.
Sure.
Any support for the pilot program?
Or a second.
You have new notification.
Sorry. So I'm not really seeing any there. Is there any motion for any action on this item?
So I'm just gonna write that the motion died for lack of a second.
Okay.
So I'd like to ask, Chair, what process could I do moving forward now?
Well, I
Since
would, you certainly could go to public comment at the select board.
Right, okay.
Or
And then,
write a letter to the select board, but they're
Yeah,
gonna
that might be a
ask
better way.
for a
Thank you.
recommendation from traffic safety.
Yeah, that you asked the traffic safety and there was no support.
well, we had, okay, so, alrighty, and then away from going directly to the select board, which I can do, could I go and just develop my own warrant article to impose this?
Warrant articles don't deal with traffic patterns,
Okay, so it's a select board issue.
correct? They're the ones with the power to implement this.
Hey,
And
Okay.
again, the 2-week pilot program idea to develop some data. The reason you don't want to do that again, maybe you could just let me know that.
I think there's a lot involved with it, and I don't think that 2 weeks is going to fully vet out this matter.
And it's gonna take extensive public notification. to let
Right, you're not gonna
them
just change
they
it.
can't travel a roadway in a certain direction, and you're gonna need police details most likely to make sure that the traffic is traveling in the proper areas or the proper directions, which may or may not be available.
Respectfully, Mr. Bloomer, again, I appreciate you bringing it forward. I just don't see any support here for the proposed change.
Yep.
Thank you. Is there any further? All right, seeing none, we'll move on to the next item on the agenda.
Do you wanna do a motion to take no action formally or no?
No,
Or
I
just leave it
mean,
at that.
I
Okay,
don't
that's fine.
think you have to vote on a no action.
Okay.
We're gonna review the speed and traffic count data for a Gold Star Drive. Mr. Burns, thank you for providing this, and could I turn it over to you, please?
You want me to bring up the slides, Mike, or you just gonna talk about them?
You can bring them up. That should be fine. I think page 10 of the packet has the speed data analysis that we can share with the public. Again, counters were placed along Gold Star at 2 locations. One was the I'm going to say north-south section. It's more like northwest to southeast section, area closer to Sparks Avenue. There was another counter placed on the short section near Milestone Lane. Based on those 2 locations, the here between I guess it was 3 and 5 Gold Star Drive, 85th percentile speed that was measured was 21 miles an hour. Posted speed limit is, or I guess unless otherwise posted, speed limit is 25 miles an hour. There were a couple of outliers of some heavy traffic. The data notes that the fastest speed that was collected was 36 miles an hour in this section. But as noted below, there just weren't a lot of traffic going above the speed limit of 25 miles an hour. So if you could cycle to the page 16 of the packet, the short section of Gold Star, again, the speed limit is much lower here. There was the fastest speed that was collected was 27 miles an hour along this very short section. But 85th percentile was 16 miles an hour in a 25 mile an hour zone. Mr. Chair, I think based on the town's policy, our guidance is to what warrants a speed hump is 5 miles an hour above an 85th percentile speed, 5 miles an hour above the posted speed limit. So just based on the data collected, the speed humps would not be warranted at either of these locations.
Thank you. Anyone else that would like to speak on this matter?
Sorry, Mike, you said it is not warranted?
Correct.
Okay.
This is Jane Valero. Can you hear me?
Yes, thank you, Ms. Valero. ahead.
Yes, it's my son who has a house at 8 Gold Star Drive. And I believe he's the one that requested the traffic study.
Mhm.
And we did it a few years ago also. And we're just scared to death that the speed that some of the cars are going through. I know you said on majority or not, but I know we'll never stop the amount of traffic coming through. I mean, like you said, in Nantucket, traffic is horrendous everywhere and during these months. But some of the speeds that have been going through these short roads here, I mean, I still think 25 miles an hour is way too fast to be going down some of these short roads personally, but it is what it is. But I'm just, he has 2 small children, and he's been out in the front, and people have just, barely made the corner going around because of the speed. And he does have some of that on video, if anybody's interested, but I just think it's becoming more of a concern every year. People are just in a hurry to get through and get frustrated and go pretty fast.
Thank you. I guess one of the things I would wonder about is, on the basis that this road is somewhat unique, not all that dissimilar to Newtown, where it's providing a cut through, that's the reason that it's sort of
Yes.
being used to avoid the rotary. This is the speed data is one of the criteria, but for general discussion purposes amongst work group members, is it something that speed humps should be considered to deter the use as a cut through? So I'll just put that out there for general discussion.
May I speak? Basically, I know we're not concerned about lessening the amount of traffic that goes through here, because I know that won't happen, but just with the speed that they go through is the concern.
We understand. All right, thank you,
Yeah.
Ms. Valero. We've got Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I think it was proper to bring up Newtown Road as an example. That's another location where it was, seen as an issue. We have this, kind of guidance or policy that we use for approving speed humps. The data at Newtown Road was, the speeds were heavier along that corridor, obviously, but it was felt that was, it warranted some improvement in safety. So, if it's all right, I'd make a motion just to recommend a speed hump to be located along Gold Star between 3 and 5 Gold Star.
Any further discussion on that motion, Chief Pittman?
Yeah, I mean, the only concern I have is it seems to be this is just the Valero's application. What about the other 13 residents on that street that have to live with the speed bumps? I haven't seen any evidence that they're involved in this application.
Oh, okay, may I speak? 2 years ago, I think it was 2 years ago, I could be incorrect on the date. We submitted a request also for speed bumps, and we had a petition from all of the neighbors that agreed that they needed speed humps, and I'm pretty sure pretty much they're all the same. And we were even going to pay for the speed bump to be put in, so there'd be no cost to the town. And at that point, we got turned down. So I could certainly get neighbors' request for a speed bump again, if that would help.
Well, that's kind of my point is, if this is going to go to the select board, I think it's going to have to be more than just one person that's wanting it. So
Okay.
if we're going to deviate from the criteria and approve something, I would rather that to make sure that it satisfies everybody on the street, not just one concerned person.
Ms. Mooney, I see you, Mr. Barnes.
We have as Mike noted, we do have a review process for traffic calming devices. Step 3. So step 1 is submitting the application. Step 2 is evaluating the street characteristics and conditions. Step 3 is demonstrating the neighborhood support. 1 being traffic safety calming devices are recommended, or if they are, following evaluation of corridor conditions, traffic safety will send the streets organizer a petition packet, including a list of abutting property owners. And then traffic safety will recognize support for the traffic calming devices contingent upon the following. The street organizer shall submit to the work group via the select board's office a petition signed by at least 2/3 of the abutting property owners who support the application and are willing to accept 100% of the cost of installing the traffic calming device along with the application fee. The petition must be signed by 2/3 of the property owners within the street segment or within 300 feet of the proposed traffic calming devices. And you then need to verify the petition signatures.
Thank you, Ms. Mooney. It's almost like you've done this before. Mr. Barnes.
Thank you. I actually just went up Gold Star about a half hour ago after I picked up the newspaper. And the interesting thing is the abutters are now creating street calming by parking cars on alternate sides of the road. And I have seen that for the last 2 or 3 times I've been up there. So they're creating their own calming devices by parking their cars on alternate sides, so you have to really go very slow.
Thank you. Work group members, there's a motion on the table from Mr. Burns. Is there a second? I'll second that. That we essentially would approve it to move on to the next step. So the motion's been made and seconded, and we'll go to a vote. Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Chief Pittman. I'm sorry, Chief Pittman,
Say no.
Chief Cranston,
Aye.
Mr. Sylvia,
Aye.
and the chair votes aye. Thank you, Ms. Valero. So, you'll receive some information, or your son will receive some information from Ms. Mooney, correct, Ms. Mooney?
Yes, I will
Thank
just
you.
note the vote and let them know what is required next.
Very good, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you very much. for your
Moving
time.
on to the next item on the agenda, review request for a yellow line replacement at 26 Easy Street. I'm going to recuse from this matter. I work for the adjacent property owner, and turn it over to Mr. Burns.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is there anyone here to speak in?
You've got Dan Lemay.
Hello, do you guys hear
Sure,
me?
go ahead.
I haven't been on a Zoom meeting in a while, and I apologize if there's some construction noise in the back. I'm at a friend's house up in Maine, and he's got somebody's building a porch back there, which isn't very convenient. My name's Dan Lemay. I operate it's a Billy Cassidy's building at 26 Easy Street on the corner of Oak and Easy, right in front of the Easy Street basin there behind the Dreamland. I think we all know that clearly traffic is an issue on Nantucket. I think it's doubly so, or especially so, down on that corner, right where people take a left, in front of my shop, especially like Cape Cod Express and these larger trucks. Yeah, thank you. And I apologize, I didn't get these to Erica, but I have some photos of where the new, maybe this won't work, where the new parking spot is in front of my shop, which would be right in front of those pumpkins in the photo below. So that yellow line there, yeah, thank you to whoever's doing that. I mean, it hasn't been a parking spot for a while. It probably stops like at that second pumpkin on the right now. It was turned black for the fence on the left has been torn down when I signed the lease, and my landlord is building a new building there. So I believe that was the premise for opening up that spot. And in return, they created a new spot in front of my shop. I mean, obviously, as a business owner, my shop is incredibly less visible from the street now. I know that that is not the concern or the scope of this meeting. It's not about my personal interest in the matter, but it genuinely has been very frustrating since they put that in maybe just over a month ago. Because now people are still parking like all the way up to the corner in front of the shop on my right. And the tractor trailers and the Cape Cod Express guys, I mean, there's been guys shouting like thick Boston accents, like move your car, like move, because it gets so backed up there and they can't take a left now, especially during peak season, because people are still parking almost up to that yellow line near the crosswalk because they run to Stubby's or Surfside to get food. They still park illegally there. They used to park illegally in front of my shop, which I'd let them for 5-10 minutes, and then they were out of there. But now this whole strip is almost, it has cars and, later in the season, almost all the way up to the crosswalk. And it's really hard for those freight trucks to take a left. And it's adding like an insane amount of congestion to the area because that's such a highly congested area already. So my main concern is that it's really not good for the area because it's such a unique spot there, especially when the 12 o'clock steamship comes in, and it's creating a lot of congestion right in that corner, which already backs up like all the way down to the hall over and, almost down to the lobster trap now, all the way down to the town lot. So I think it's making it even worse as people can't take a left there.
Very good, thank you. Is it Dan Lemitre? Am I saying that correctly?
Limate, the R is tricky,
Oh,
silent.
all right. Well, thank you for that. Any comments at all from the work group? I'll say that I wasn't here when this was the line was taken away. I don't know if anybody wants to speak to that justification for removing the line, or if anyone has a motion.
Mike,
Go ahead.
I don't remember the line, any vote or some, so I mean, it's possible I missed a meeting somewhere, but I don't remember any change there, but in any event, what should be there is the standard 15 or 20-foot line from the intersection back anyway. I know that won't cover the whole front of his building, and like he mentioned, it's not our concern whether a car blocks the side of his building. Our concern is whether traffic can get around that corner, and it is a challenge for some of the delivery trucks without that 15 or 20-foot space there. So I think we ought to have a line put down in compliance with the traffic regulations from the intersection back along the street.
Sounds like a motion to me. Just to confirm, Erica, is it 20 feet for the regular, or Chief Pittman, 20 feet from the intersection?
I can't remember off the top of my head if it's 15.
It's 20. We just recently looked it up.
Yeah.
And I will note that traffic safety reviewed this last May. It didn't get implemented until this year because Mr. Cassidy had indicated that he didn't need that at the time of approval. And Ray, I know you've got your hand raised. And it looks like Chief Pittman, you were not there. And it was only 3 people voting. And it did go to the select board as well. So just FYI.
Ray?
Yeah, this was the curb cut approval. The the line at the corner is, I don't have the measurements in front of me. I had taken them and I thought I texted them, and I can't find them in my text real quick, but there's just enough space between the new curb cut and that yellow line for a legal spot. If you extend that yellow line even more from the corner, you're going to lose that spot. There's not enough. There's just not enough to put a 20-foot line. Yeah, these numbers weren't correct either when I went down there. So it was eliminate 23 feet, leave 15 feet. We left 15 feet, but it wound up not being 23 feet left. So I believe it got down to about 18, I think, 17, 18 feet is the spot between, well, it says it's 40 foot, sorry. It said it was 40 foot and it wound up being 34 foot, I believe. So there's not, like, if you extend it more, you're going to lose a full spot. And I know that already went through with the curb cut issue. So I'm not sure if we extend it now, you're going to lose another one. Does that have to be approved again?
So are you saying that that line from Easy Street back up Oak Street's 15 feet now?
Yes.
I mean, that should be plenty.
Yeah, I've been by there. Yeah, I've been by there the last couple of days, and I can't see, you know, we drive trucks all the time. I can't see a guy not making that corner if a car's parked there. If they're parked on the yellow line, that, yeah, I can see how that'd be a problem. But if they're not parked on the yellow line, they're parked in the legal spot, I
Right.
don't see an issue of them making the corner.
I would withdraw my motion then.
If I may, so I don't know how this works. I don't know when I'm allowed to cut in here.
Go ahead. You
Um,
just have to be recognized by the chair. That's the only
Thank you.
condition.
The part of the problem is people, even when that was a yellow line all the way down to the corner of the building, like further west there, people still park there because it's such a highly trafficked area. Like they still would park in front of my shop. But even then, you know, that's the spot that they're now legal to park in. And yes, you can take a left there, like most regular trucks can, like a big Ford F-350 can take a left there. A tractor can barely get by. Now that the car is there, they can still get by, but people still park in front of it because they want to run to wherever they're going. The parking is limited in town. Obviously, they are breaking the town law by parking on a yellow line, but there's not a lot of enforcement down there. And now people are still doing the same thing, but they can put another car length up front where they're almost, you know, even though they're not supposed to be there, they still utilize that yellow line that's open to run wherever they're going for sometimes 10, 15 minutes. And that's when it's really, really a problem. So I don't know if it's just, I mean, it's creating more of an opportunity for people to block that corner, and especially for these freight trucks to take a left. But I saw it firsthand many, many times, and I just think it makes it a lot worse. This is, if I unblur my background, maybe I'll be able to show my phone here. But this is an example of, you can see the stop sign, you know, just where the yellow Jeep is here is now where people are allowed to come up, and the stop sign is right there. So it's I mean, having people able to park there makes people park further in front of them as well. And it's just, you know, I wish I got some more photos of it a little bit before this meeting, but it's definitely creating an exponential increase in backing the traffic up way down Oak and making it harder for people to keep flowing down Easy Street as well. So, I mean, it sounds like maybe there is enough, as Mr. Sylvia has said, but it still raises a concern for me why was a yellow line there in the first place, and if I don't think removing it is a good option to justify opening something out. You know, I understand you probably don't want to lose a parking space in town or something like that, but I don't think it's a good remedy for opening up the new one just to create one there, because I think it creates more trouble than it's worth.
Thank you for the comments. To the members, any other, Erica?
I just had a question for Ray. I know that sidewalk is probably, well, I'm assuming it's maybe too narrow, but is there space to install a sign right next to the curb that says like no parking here to corner?
There's still one there on my building, by the way.
Yeah, that's gotta
right.
come down, yeah. I don't, it would be tight there because the awning, between those posts from that awning over is really the sidewalk. I mean, it's usable, and you could probably put one there. You know, it's a tough spot where to put it there compared to what it was before.
I just wasn't sure if there was room and if that could help clarify that there's no parking.
Yeah, we have used signs in strategic locations. We usually don't try to do them, but we do have them in a couple spots that just say no parking on yellow line. Not saying that's going to help, but if they're parked on the yellow line, and I know Jerry's downtown all the time, you know, quick call and he could walk right over there and throw a ticket right on it.
Any other comments from members? If there's no motion, or if there's not an appetite to make the change, Chief withdrew his motion. Maybe we move on, and I honestly, I have some creative ideas that maybe we can, like the sign, that maybe we can explore between now and next month. I'd be happy to talk about other creative ideas. If it sounds to me like illegal parking is the issue here that's creating the problem, I'd like to, Ray, Chief, others, just bat around some ideas between now and next month, if that's all right, to maybe see if we can address this another way. If there's consensus on that, we'll move on to the next item. And Mr., go ahead. Quickly.
Sorry, one last thing that I didn't mention that I think is very important. Is there any way you can pull that photo back up real quick? Whoever's in control of that. So where that red bench is.
Yes.
Which one? There's two.
Oh, sorry, on the left, the one further to the left. So right
One
below
in front of your
that.
shop.
Yes. And this is, I don't know, this is back when it was Surf Club. The area looks a little bit different now, and that fence is down. I believe that's a handicap access to the corner right there, which is where the new parking spot is.
No.
There is a curb cut there. Is that what that's there for?
No.
I
Right.
would say the handicap ramp or the accessible ramp is where the crosswalk is, the brick crossing there. There's a
Yeah,
lot of these
that's not-
quirky driveway curb cuts from.
Probably an old curb cut.
It's an old curb cut. There
Okay.
used to be a garage there.
Right.
I believe.
Okay. Well, thank you guys for your time. I do appreciate it. Obviously, I do have a interest in keeping my shop open. It's been slow and it's hard to stay visible there now when there's a Tahoe parked in front of my car, but it really is the amount of traffic that I have seen it create on that corner in such a unique area that's already highly congested is something that I think is worth thinking about for the well-being of the town and downtown area.
Thank you for the comments. Like I said, we're going to talk about some other ideas. So it sounds like we didn't address all the problems and everybody wins on this issue. We'll come back next month and explore some other ideas, or if they're not really that popular, not explore those other ideas. So we'll move on to the next item. Again, thank you for bringing the issue to the group and participating in the discussion. Mr. Chair, the meeting is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Burns. We're going to move on to item number
Thank
5, item 4, which is to the Tuk Pedicab.
And he's
Review
not
the,
on.
I don't see him on either, so I would say that we would hold this over till he could attend to present the materials, unless someone wants to go over it.
I will note one thing on the agenda. I had written out A, B, and C. B, meaning review request to extend the pedicab license to December 31st. I would probably take that off because that's actually before the select board next week. The board had said that they would review that. I got a little confused. So the board is reviewing that request, but the other requests they don't want to hear until traffic safety is weighed in.
Okay, so sounds like we'll just hold this over and have ask the applicant to present the materials, and we'll review it at that time.
Yeah.
Okay. And we have a review of proposed relocation of a crosswalk at Broad Street and Center for crossing Gay Street at Center Street.
Mr. Chair, before we leave that item 4, I would just ask if there's and not that we have to make a decision on this, but if there's appetite. Well, I guess the question is to Erica. Did the select board want input from the Bike Pedestrian Advisory Committee and Traffic Safety Work Group?
Yes, they want
Okay.
it both for the expanded pedicab operation and changes to regulations.
Thank you.
The license request is just going to go forward.
Very good. And only because we have a Bike Industry Advisory Committee later this afternoon, I can ask the group if there's, as well as you, Mr. Chair, and Erica, if there's appetite for a joint meeting on this.
That seems kind of complicated.
Okay.
To me, but I want to just stick to our regular meetings.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Okay, item 5, Ms. Mooney, you want to cue that one up for us?
So this came to me 2 days ago from the DPW. And Ray might want to review it, but just very quickly, there is currently an existing crosswalk that goes from the steps of the Jared Coppin House over to the Center Street sidewalk that's over by like Stoke Ack. And actually let me just I want to show you the overall map. So you can see here that there's actually 3 crosswalks in this area. One that crosses here to the handicap or the accessible ramps, one that crosses Center Street at the accessible ramps, and then there's this random one down here at Federal Street. You can see that we just have the 2 crossing. And so what the DPW is proposing is to remove this kind of random diagonal crosswalk here and replace it here. So that there is currently, I believe, an accessible ramp on the north side, Ray? Is that correct? And with the DPW doing its sidewalk reconstruction from Quinn Street to Gay Street, they're also going to be putting in an accessible ramp here, and they want to move this crosswalk to here. Did I get that right? Right?
Yes, yep.
Okay. And that's just a figure kind of showing approximately where the new one would be.
Yeah, and it's also when you come up to the stop sign at Center Street and you turn left, those trees along by the JC house create an obstruction where somebody might be, you know, almost halfway into the crosswalk before you actually see them when you pull away. So it's also going to be, I think, a safer location for that crosswalk.
So I think the DPW is just looking for a motion or an endorsement to relocate the crosswalk as presented.
Mr. Burns,
I'm sorry, I never lowered my hand, but I'll go
Ah.
ahead and make a motion to support it.
any further, is there a second?
Second. I'll second
Motion
it.
made and seconded. Any further discussion? Hearing none. Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Mr. Sylvia,
Aye.
Chief Pittman,
Aye.
Chief Granson. Is that an aye, Chief?
Aye.
Thank you. And the chair votes aye. Thank you very much, DPW, bringing that forward, and that'll move us on to the next item on the agenda, which is any other business not reasonably anticipated. I wanted to mention one, which was at the select board meeting last night. One of the members raised the concern with the parking on the bike paths. And, you know, we had a couple of years ago, gone over a proposed change to the regulations that would have essentially enacted a prohibition on the parking on the bike paths and multi-use paths. That had BPAC support, it had traffic safety, and then it had come back for a reconsideration. And Chief, I know you had some concerns with enforcement. It's not an agenda item, so I don't want to go down a big discussion on it, but it was brought up by a select board member. So I was considering whether that's something that we might have as a future agenda item for discussion. But I wanted to be sure if there was any sort of concern with doing so. And really, Chief Pittman, I know that you were the one, you had those concerns, but is it worth discussing again?
I mean, it's always worth discussing. I think the issues were adequate notice. And the problem was, in our opinion, it's going to take a lot of signs to be put up.
All right.
Prohibiting the parking. And that's, you know, if the town wants to do that, that's fine. But you can't have a stretch of road 2 miles long with no signs, no adequate notice, and then expect us to be able to enforce it.
I had some thoughts on that. And again, I'm just hesitant to get into a larger discussion on it without it being a published agenda item. So maybe we can include it and at least have a discussion on maybe some ideas. And now with Mr. Burns here, you know, one of my thoughts, again, just general, but not to get, is, you know, how is it all that different than the 25-mile-an-hour notice that's not posted everywhere? But maybe we just put it on an agenda. And it's responsive to a select board member raising it.
Yep.
And if it goes somewhere, maybe it does and maybe it doesn't, if that seems okay.
Yeah, just a quick answer to your questions, because the 25-mile-an-hour statutory limit, it's all, I mean, when you got your driver's license, you basically signed saying you understand the law, and that's the law. This is a regulatory law, which it's not the same in every community. Therefore, every community needs to provide adequate notice. And courts have recognized the only way to provide adequate notice is to install signage directing a motorist what they have to do.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I'll discuss it with Ms. Mooney and maybe and Mr. Burns, and maybe we decide to figure out whether it's an agenda item or it's just not. It's already been decided and it's sort of a double jeopardy kind of thing.
Okay. Art, if you don't mind, I know everybody's probably want to get off, but I know that there were some other business items from the last meeting that I just wanted to give little quick updates on.
Update, sure, please go ahead.
The post office parking spaces on North Union Street. That seems as though that they are being regularly used by post office vehicles. I've walked by there numerous times and seen those. And I believe Mr. Sylvia has as well. So we're gonna, I might just have a little conversation. I'm trying to remember who it came from. I think it was Melinda Burns. Apparently there was supposedly some people maybe forging parking passes and sticking them in their windows. Anybody that's parked there needs to have either an official post office vehicle or an official US, government plate. So we are following up on that. And then Mr. Burns had asked about the rights of way at intersections. And we talked about this last week, and Mike is going to be filling out a request for legal services form to give to the town manager to talk to town council about the disconnect, if that's the right word to use, between our local regulations that were implemented as a result of town meeting vote and state law. And then the other one was the milestone and Novedere Farm Road, but that doesn't seem like that's any action needed.
Thank you.
I can just give a bit of an update that I've submitted those to Mass DOT, and I'm working to advance at least two of the intersections, one by town meeting vote in 2019. The community supported reconstructing the Milestone Rotary. So that's been approved to advance into the project development pipeline, as well as the Novedere Farm Road at Milestone Road to advance that into the project development pipeline. The reconstruction of Milestone Road itself, that's something we'll discuss in December with Mass DOT, but that's just a quick update for you all.
Thanks. Does anybody else have any other comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to approval of the minutes from October 17th. Any concerns? Motion to approve those minutes?
So moved.
Made, seconded by anyone?
Second.
Mr. Sylvia, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Chief Pittman,
Aye.
Chief Cranston,
Aye.
Chair votes aye. And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Mr. Sylvia, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mr. Burns,
Aye.
Chief Pittman,
Aye.
Chief Cranston.
Aye.
Thank you all. Bye.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Erica.
Thanks.
See you all later.